Okay, everybody. Hello, welcome to another session of Brand Squared. Really excited to be with you guys today, online here, sharing some thoughts around your brands and the challenges you have. My name is Scott Strong. I've been working in the technology industry for about 20 years now. Over the past few years, really focused on brands, the content that they contain, managing the data sets and processes that help brand owners effectively connect to their consumers and drive compliance with respect to that. Despite popular demand, I won't be balancing on a wire because it wouldn't fit in the screen here, but I do want to share with you many of the thoughts we have and many of the trends we have that are ongoing in the industry today and changing ever quickly as we move forward. Moving on some slides here. So if we look at what Philippe Petit looked over in 1974 as he peered across the two twin towers as he was doing his famous wire walk across those, we kind of get the feeling that as brand owners, we are also experiencing some of this. We work for many beloved brands globally. They're our most cherished assets. We want our clients and our consumers to feel that way as well. And people want to trust these brands. You've obviously built a career around these brands. You want to be proud of the brands you build, and your consumers want to engage with these brands. But one of the other elements you quite often miss is we in the supply chain who interact with your brands and work with you every day also want to feel proud of those brands. So we want that trust to be there, and we effectively walk that tightrope with you on a daily basis and are committed to that. The conditions you face as you go forward are pretty broad. There's ever-changing regulatory elements that are impacting you on a daily basis, whether it be 1169 in Europe, EU 1169 compliance, the new FDA regulations for FAC panels in the US, or Japanese regulations, or even in South America, many of the challenges you face going forward. Conditions are ever-changing, so it's important that we take that posture when we look at the data sets we interact with and how we drive our brands forward. As we look at launching a new product, the inputs and the outputs have changed over the years and will continue to change. And the resources we have are ever-changing too. Many of you are under mergers, acquisitions, adjustments, and controls with respect to how many resources you have. So it's real important that we look at the tools that you have as you go forward so that we can be effective, and we as a supply chain can help you with that. Critically important, this is not an Adobe Photoshop rendering. It is actually Nick Walenda, who wire walked across Niagara Falls. Obviously, preparation goes into this. The equipment, the training, the team you field to do a new launch in a given region around the world for a given event is very critical. And we often think of this, we may not realize we're walking on a wire, but any time, any point, any tweet could knock us off, depending on the information we're displaying on our packages as well as online about our brands. So it's real important that we take this perspective for our companies and our shareholders as we interact and build great brands for the market. The package today has taken on a new role. Beyond just being the delivery device for your product, I'll leave whether it's paper, plastic, and the thickness of it and how sustainable it is to the rest of your supply chain. But as we look at it, it almost has in some cases become a symbolic icon for the brand. And it carries with it more and more now a contract with the consumer. It has nutrition facts, it has ingredients, it has claims and statements and health components. It has become effectively a consumer contract. Not only onto the shelf, the importance of that contract is critical, but as we look at the emerging or quite emerged already online interaction with your brands, the one-to-many relationships as that contract gets carried out over multiple channels, it's just really, really important that we enter into a way of thinking the broad impact we have with that image and that brand and the nutritional facts, and how we managed those yesterday and how we're managing those today is not going to meet the needs or mitigate the risk as we roll forward. The package itself, as many of you know, now faces many different onslaughts from a regulatory standpoint. Regulations from country to country, region to region, aren't constant. They're always changing. So how are we going to adapt to those? How are we going to prepare ourselves from a process standpoint, from how we manage our data standpoint? The multiple languages we interact with. Here in the U.S., it's one country, 2 languages, 3 languages. In Europe, it's multiple countries, multiple languages. Same in South America as well as Asia. So how we interact with our brands, how we manage the data sets, the sizes we have, the extensions we make, the promotions we do for the World Cup, really drive a one-to-many relationship in our brands as we expand and go forward. And we need to start thinking, although it may be painful for some of the brand owners, we need to start thinking from an IT perspective, if we can, for these brands. The process, and this is a secret, so shh, with many of our beloved brands that we work out, there's various levels of maturity on how we take copy in for a given product launch, how we route it through our organization. Potentially it could be an archaic model, I'll venture to guess, in different parts of the world and then through different brands. Marketing, CSR, legal, ingredients, all sharing emails, collaborating with spreadsheets and templates as we roll forward and try to get this done, to get the pack to shelf on time. It's important to realize that although there's different levels of maturity out there, one of the things that's really interesting is you guys get it done all the time. You make the World Cup, you make the Olympics, you make that seasonal ice cream launch in the world for summertime. You do it all the time because of your individual acts of heroism and the supply chain that you've surrounded yourself with. But as pressure continues, that success you've had at being an individual hero could become a weakness as you roll forward, because the pressure is just going to keep continuing with respect to the brand. The pressure, no doubt, will increase. You did it for the Olympics, you did it for the World Cup, but the Olympics are coming up again. So the pressure will continue to be on you, and the complexity will continue to be on you. So we want to provide you with some tools and some thoughts on how you can mitigate this for yourselves, for your brands, and for your shareholders, most importantly. If we look at some of the elements of the brand and the components on shelf, we're going to see that the pressure is going to continue. If we look at some of the EU 1169 requirements that have emerged in Europe to be complied with by the end of the year, that's this year, everybody, we looked at the exact same elements or claims or components that you make on shelf now need to ride into the e-commerce world, which makes sense. If your package contains your contract with the consumer, that contract needs to be exactly the same online. In today's litigious world, you can't have multiple contracts defining the claims on your product or the nutritional benefits of your product. You need to have one contract. So it only makes sense that the item that the consumer picks up on the shelf needs to be the same as the elements that are out in email or social media or applications that are out there. So it's really important that we think about our brand that way as we go forward. There's no doubt that you felt like this before, and you will feel like this again. I guarantee you're going to feel it more often. Here again, highlighting the fact that you've got less resources, the regulations are coming on stronger, and you need to continue to manage your brand effectively for your careers. Not to be gender specific, as a gentleman, you will feel like this. So we need to make sure that we're doing things so that you and your supply chain don't feel like this going forward, that you feel in control and you actually have control on the data sets as you manage them. When we look at what you're doing right now, I'm sure you're watching me, but you're multitasking, no doubt. You've got a couple windows open. If you could open up one more window, I'd like to do a quick experiment with you and show you some things. If you Google banana and you look to the left or to the right, you're going to see that a banana pops up and you're going to see some nutritional facts. You'll note that as you go in and interact with the size of the serving, you're going to see that the dynamic data changes below regarding cholesterol, sodium, carbohydrates, daily nutrients. And what you're getting a demonstration of there is a glimpse into the future of how the consumer, through the multiple applications that they use and the multiple experiences that they have, they want to interact with your product that way. So the days of static data, snapshots of nutrition fact panels being distributed around the world are quickly leaving us, And we're left with this idea and the reality that parametric data, XML data, is here to stay, and the first customers or the first brands to get there with this interactive type of data set will definitely be more compelling, as a consumer can now interrogate and investigate and engage with your brand at the contract level, beyond the experience level. So just a little side note, you can close the window now and come back to me or Google other fruit later. If we look at your brand and we look at the packaging information, the e-commerce information, the social information, we start to very easily see that the data sets that we create now have a one-to-many relationship. If we create the right data for the brand and manage it holistically in a concise way with modern technologies and processes, we can then repurpose and reuse it. So right now you probably have within your organization people in charge of online media, people in charge of social, people in charge of building special apps and engagement models, and then of course you've got good old-fashioned packaging. And as we create one data set, we can now serve multiple purpose and multiple channels with that data set. So it's not a stretch. Technology companies have been doing this for years, and how you manage your data. We now, as an enterprise through the cloud, want to allow you guys as marketing brand owners to manage your data in that effective way as well. The package, interestingly enough, as we go around and consult many people, many CPGs, many pharmas, many retail, private label companies, and we ask them where the single source of data is for the package. Where's that single source of truth? We often see them grab the package. The package is the single source of truth. Very dangerous. They don't have a record for that. It just is the package. The package contains the late night changes that occurred, the phone calls, the emails, the right before the copy run, right before the print run, data sets are being modified. Very inefficient way, often not to a closed loop, so the one place they feel that the data is comfortable is on the package. So many of the companies out there that we consult with are actually taking pictures of the package, making it the star of the show as they try to comply with some of these new regs. And a picture is worth 1,000 words, but online it can kind of get you in trouble because you can't often recall or change that dynamically. So we're looking for a better way. We want you to join us in this journey. And we believe that journey begins and ends with a database. A database is something that we brought to us in the 80s and the 90s. Oracle and Sybase brought this to us, and so it's very compelling to think of why don't we just put our data in there and manage it. The benefits are multiple in that we can now manage multiple languages, we can manage multiple configurations, we can manage different substitutions and alterations with respect to that data. We can now, like a Rubik's Cube, be looking at the same data set, but a different color every time, depending on what language we're in, what geography we're in, what size pack we're in, and we can now be consistent on the standard platform. So we're excited about it. IT has now entered again the marketing space, and we're moving forward with some great capability to help you deliver. If we look at that, we can then streamline the processes. So now copy contributors can now interact with the database, and the pack can now be driven from that. Very powerful in that we can now use modern techniques of configuration control. Many of the elements that we use for managing the multiple parts in our aircraft and our automobile and our cell phones, the applications that I grew up with and managed as an engineer, now become relevant to marketing. The problem is not as complex as all the parts in a Boeing 777, but it is not a trivial problem. And so we're going to leverage some of the capabilities as we go forward. And then what that allows us to do, as I indicated earlier, is we can then serve up the data sets in multiple languages and multiple configurations for all the consumer channels you have for that, so that you're not reinventing it every time. Very critical that we think broader about this data set and put on our IT hats. Your skills and resources, obviously, you need to retool yourselves as an organization. You need to engage in some change management and think about these data sets more holistically. There are resources out there to prepare you for your wire walk, and I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about those as well. There are standards out there that have emerged and will continue to emerge. There's consulting that's going on a daily basis now around the world to help you. there's process and methods, and of course technology near and dear to my heart that's going to enable you to manage these data sets in a more effective way through copy and content. GS1, many of you have heard of. It's obviously a cornerstone for what's going on in this space now. It's giving us data model and data constructs for managing the hierarchy and the data definition of these. It's not all inclusive yet. It's still emerging. Many of you sit on the boards for GS1, so you understand the complexity of the data sets as you go region to region. And there are gaps in it. It's not perfect, but it will evolve. We believe that this is a key source as you look at managing your copy and building out infrastructures to support it. We leverage it. We expect that you will going forward. And the more and more knowledge you can build via consultants to help you digest the GS1 standards is going to be a benefit going forward. If we look at the element of consulting, we go around and consult with many clients out there about their data set and basically take a pack and do what we call an every square inch study. And we look at the actual ownership and who owns what constituents in the package. What elements are owned by legal, what elements are owned by SRA, what's owned by marketing, and really break the package down so that there's a sense of ownership across it. Because right now we find out in many organizations, no one owns it. Very few companies have clear, defined ownership within that. In some consulting efforts we've seen, we ask about an element and we find that no one owns it. We ask about another element, some claim or statement, and 5 people own it. So it's very clear that just some simple consulting and restructuring of ownership of the data is going to go a long way. If we look at the maturity model, we see that many of our clients are somewhere along the curve of understanding what the challenge is and then realizing that they need to get to the next level of engagement with this data. They may start out at a level 1 with some level of awareness. Many of them are earning level 2 now, where they're starting to form committees and trying to figure out, how from a scientific and regulatory affairs can we get our arms around this data. Does marketing own the whole initiative? Well, the answer is no. Marketing doesn't own the whole initiative. Regulatory affairs needs to be involved because they actually own and review some of the claims and statements, so making their lives easier with a content database it's going to be really important going forward. Tools and technologies that are out there, I've built many of them throughout my career, but copy management is obviously a cornerstone for this, to be able to manage the copy in a hierarchy. Workflow management, the way we process that data, gain approval for it, review it, cycle it through, do a closed loop so we can analyze data sets, so we can measure visibility with respect to it. Online proofing and collaboration so that we can engage. Text compare so that we can Unicode compare what's on the pack in some structured format against what was originally in the database. Did we nail it? Are we early on? Are there changes we need to make? Again, just using good old QA and making sure that we're making changes early before we hit the print. Digital asset management is a place where things are stored, but structurally now, managing the copy in the same place that the image is stored going forward, so that when you want to make a revision to something, you have that ability. And then key is business intelligence. Are we improving? Are we managing the data sets? Are our suppliers interacting with the data sets in an effective way for us? All technologies available today out of the cloud to help you. So with that said, are you ready to jump on? Challenges is probably most of you are already on. So what do we do now? How do we get moving with this? You create a business case. It's a good place to start. There's many websites out there. I would recommend the driving, burning platform of regulatory, the EU 1169, the new FDA U.S. requirements for changing nutrition fact panels, visibility, cycle time. Out on our website, www.bluesoftware.com, we actually have an ROI calculator coming out in the next coming months, which will give you a toolkit to help build that business case. It doesn't happen by just logging into the cloud and installing some software. You're going to have to change your business practices, the way you manage this data, the way you engage with it, the way you maybe auto-build artwork is all going to change, and it's going to be very exciting going forward. So, but you do definitely need to spearhead operational change. Again, it doesn't happen in the mid-level part of your organization within marketing. It happens at a leadership level with risk and legal and the regulatory element. So it definitely is a VP level consideration, not just a mid-market middle management scenario. So reach up, build these business cases, and there's groups to help you out, including my plug for the day, bluesoftware.com, where we've got many of the tools and technologies out there in the cloud, which are going to enable you to manage your data, manage your package, position you for managing these data sets in a one-to-many relationship in an ever-changing e-commerce world. So my advice overall for you is don't look down. You're on a wire, no doubt, but we're here to help, and so are many of your other elements in your supply chain. There's a lot going on in this space, so pay attention, and we'll all get through it together. And those that get there first, I believe, are going to have an advantage and confidence as they roll forward. So with that being said, I will now route to any questions that are out there. And we've got one question coming in. What percent of the industry is actually automating artwork right now? So one of the things that is different is it does vary from industry to industry. So a lot of the pharmaceutical clients tend to have a tighter control over their data sets right now. So if you consider them to be 20% of the space, you're probably seeing maybe 5% of them actually having their data under control such that they can automate some of the artwork. The journey begins long before just automating artwork. It actually begins by just managing these data sets and getting them in a controlled way. I'd say CPG is a little less mature. The dynamics of change on pack have made it such that the automation of artwork has lagged a little bit compared to pharma, and then retail is even farther behind with respect to pure automation. But we're seeing more and more. We're engaged in conversations every day now where companies see this in their future, if not next year, the year after, and definitely within 3 years. So we're really excited about it. Next question, how many sources of data for copy does your technology consolidate? So we realize, at least from our perspective, being a provider in the space with our technology, Blue, is that we're a citizen of these data sets. You've got many of these repositories, including SAP and Oracle, that may house some of the data, some of the nutritional data which drive into the fat panels, but a lot of it also resides in marketing, and some of it resides in regulatory and legal. So it's really the culmination of those data sets that then we see residing in a cloud platform, and there's no single element, but also the ability to have multiple data sets feeding into it and then manage multiple relationships for those data in multiple languages. So the next question here is, when evaluating who owns different elements on pack, how do you deal with situations where many different parties feel like they own the same element? Rock, paper, scissors works? No, actually, just kidding. There usually is a higher class of legal claim statements, regulatory statements, nutrition elements, and so through some realization that there is ownership at a macro level within the organization, we can sort of ferret out who owns what and create that ownership. But one of the challenges we see when you talk about ownership, if you're sitting around the room, and this goes to you building your business case for it, is you say, who wants to own all the data we have in our company about every product, and who wants to be responsible for all that data and potentially lose their job or go to jail if we're wrong? You don't get too many takers. But that's what's at stake, is these data sets in pharmaceutical, if wrong, can actually put people in jail if you hit an FDA reg that you're in violation of. So I don't think we hit that in consumer, but it can definitely be career limited. So it's important as a group that we get together and define that. And then the final question, what executives do I look toward to sponsor or fund an initiative? As I said earlier, is absolutely at the executive level, and it is at a VP level. We can start working with you to build the business case at lower levels in the organization, but clearly the change is so impactful and the risk so high to get it right that it really does require VP of regulatory, VP of marketing, CMO, looking at the risk primarily, trying to mitigate the risk, but also looking at the upside and efficiency within a hardcore tangential business case that will put you where you need to be. So I think that's about it. I was very excited to spend time with you and look forward to seeing you and working with you as we go forward on this journey to build better brands and keep that contract with the consumer alive and well and compliant. Thank you very much.